Have you ever wondered if a signature is real, or if a document claiming to be 10 years old was actually created just last week? So hello guys, welcome back to the channel Case 23, where we decode forensic science in the most easiest way. So today in this video, we are diving into the world of question document analysis and its age estimation. A really interesting and fascinating subject in the realm of forensic science. What it basically does is that it uncovers the truth hidden in ink, paper, and handwritings. So before we begin the video, let me just give you a brief on what we will discuss today. First, we'll discuss the purpose, where we'll understand the main purpose of question document analysis. So why it is done, and what problem does it solve? I mean, it has to solve some problems, right? Since you are doing forensic analysis. And then we'll move to the types of analysis. Then where we will look at the different methods used, because there isn't a single way to examine a document. It all depends on what we are looking for. Then we will dive into the ink. Even your pen's ink can reveal secrets. We'll see how ink tells us when and how a document was written. Next we'll move on to the paper analysis, where the paper's texture, thickness, and many other hidden marks can expose forgeries. Then will come the detective work. We will learn how experts catch erasers, overwritings, and replaced sections in the detection of alteration. Then we'll see how signatures and handwritings are compared to spot forgery. After all, no two people write exactly the same way, so there's difference in every handwriting. Here comes the cool part, figuring out how old a document really is. Then we'll move on to the ink estimation techniques, that is a sub-part of age estimation. In there, we'll learn about the scientific techniques used to estimate ink, like chromatography, spectroscopy, etc. And just like ink, paper also has its own signs of aging. We'll see how forensic experts detect them. Then, of course, nothing is perfect. We will talk about the challenges and what could go wrong in analysis. And finally, we will end the video with a quick recap of what we have learned today. So let's get started. So basically I have divided the video into two parts. First we'll discuss about the question document analysis, and then we'll move forward to the age estimation techniques. So let's start with the first part, that is question document analysis. So let's start with the first topic, that is purpose of document analysis. So let me ask you a question. Why do we even examine documents in forensic science? So to answer to that question is, first and most importantly, it's all about authentication. I mean, to detect the document is real or fake. In forensic labs, a lot of documents come to be examined, and that involves a lot of energy and time. So after doing all the examinations, if it turns out that the document is fake, it is of no use. So before that, we must examine if the document is real or fake. In simple words, we need to check if a document is genuine or fake. Has someone signed it properly? Was it made on the date it says, or has it been changed, altered, or created in a fraud in mind? Now, this is extremely important in cases like property papers, legal contracts, wills and testaments, school or government certificates. I mean, the mark sheets you get, there can be forged, the marks can be changed, or the percentages can be changed. So that examination is done in forensic science. So basically, any document that can impact someone's life, money, or rights are examined in question document analysis. The second purpose is detection of alterations and forgeries. Now, a question document might look normal, but with proper forensic methods, we can find many problems in it, like additions or erasures, overwriting or replaced ink, forged signatures. For example, whether someone is trying to copy, trace, or sign freely. And even pages that have been removed or new ones that has been added can be detected. And here's the cool part. Forensic experts use high-end tools and techniques to find even the smallest tampering, something that our eyes may never notice. And lastly, Document analysis plays a big role in legal disputes, financial frauds, and criminal investigations. So, in legal disputes, for example, when a will or contract is questioned, and for financial frauds such as tampered checks or fake drafts. And lastly, in criminal investigations, the examples can be ransom notes or anonymous letters. Now, these all can be examined in question document analysis by the forensic experts. Okay, now let's talk about the types of analysis in question document. So, when a document arrives in a forensic lab, many different types of analysis can be done. For example, ink and paper analysis, detection of any alterations, handwriting or signature analysis, and lastly, but not the least, is the age estimation. And age estimation can be done for both the ink and as well as the paper. So now let's move on to something we all use every day but never think twice about. That is ink and paper analysis. So first I will start with the ink and then I will move on to the paper. So yes, ink can tell a lot about a document. Ink analysis is used in forensic science to find out what kind of ink was used and what it is made of, mainly to determine its chemical composition of the ink. And why it is important? It is important because if a document was written using different inks in different parts, it could mean someone has added or changed something later. So let me give you a small example. Imagine a check, the bank check, where the name and the amount were written with one pen, but the signature looks like it was done with the another. That can raise serious doubts. Forensic ink analysis helps confirm if the ink matches throughout the document or not. So that means if the name and the amount was written with an ball pen and the signature was done with a gel pen, it means that two different pens were used, and it means the check was forged. Someone else wrote the amount and someone else did the sign. Then let's look at some of the techniques used for ink analysis. The first is TLC. So many of you have heard about TLC, right? It is thin layer chromatography. This method separates the component of ink, like its different dyes, like the different colors it gets separated out. If two inks look the same but behave differently in TLC, we know they are not from the same pen. The next is high performance liquid chromatography, that is HPLC. This is like a more advanced technique than the TLC part. It measures the amount of dye in the ink and also helps find even tiny differences. It is generally useful when the ink has faded over the time. And the third is Raman and FTIR spectroscopy. Now these methods help identify the actual chemical bonds in the ink. The ink has some chemicals in it, right? So this Raman and FTIR spectroscopy can difference out the chemical bonds present in the ink. Now this means we can compare the ink structure at the molecular level. Now this can really help in forensic analysis. Then let me ask you a question. Why do we need ink and instrument analysis in the first place? What exactly we are trying to find out? So let me break it down for you. First, we need to detect the ink type. So the first step is figuring out what kind of ink was used. Was it a ball pen, gel pen, fountain pen, or maybe even printer toner? Each of these ink has different chemical structure, and identifying it gives a solid starting point in the investigation. And how do we identify the chemical structures? Remember I told you about Raman and FTIR spectroscopy. And then the second is to match and mismatch inks. This is where things get really interesting. We generally compare the ink in question with a known or reference ink to see if they are the same. For example, if a check was written with one ink and signed with a slightly different one, this could mean someone has added or changed details later. A mismatch can be a big red flag in forgery cases. And the third is identification of alterations. Lastly, ink analysis helps reveal hidden changes like overwritten names or dates, added entries using a different pen, or use of multiple inks in the same document. Now, all of this helps us understand what really happened and whether document can be trusted or not. So now let's move on to the other side of the story, that is paper analysis. So we are surrounded by paper from the time we take birth. And paper is not just a blank white sheet. In forensic science, it can actually reveal a lot about the document's authenticity and origin. So for paper analysis, we can do both the physical analysis and as well as the chemical analysis. So in physical analysis, we generally look at some characteristics like texture, thickness, watermarks, etc. In texture, we look for if the document is rough, smooth, handmade, or glossy. And in thickness, it is generally examined whether it is regular A4 or a heavier card type or a photo document. And in watermarks, they are the often hidden designs that can link paper to a certain brand or batch. Now, these small things may seem simple, but they can help forensic experts check if the paper matches what it claims to be, or if someone has replaced the paper to tamper with the document. And then we'll move on to the chemical composition, which includes the fiber content, pH levels, additives, and etc. I mean additives like starch, coating agents, and many more. This gives paper a kind of fingerprint, a unique profile that can help trace its origin. Now coming to the techniques used in paper analysis, we generally go for UV light analysis, infrared spectroscopy, and microscopy. So UV light can reveal hidden watermarks or alterations that are not visible in normal light. And in infrared spectroscopy, it can show the chemical bonds in the paper, helping identify its makeup. And lastly, microscopy is used to look at tiny fiber structures or any unusual patterns. So let's move on to the other type of analysis, that is detection of alteration. So I'm sure that many of you have heard in news channels or have seen in the movies that sometimes people try to erase, overwrite, or even add new entries to a document after it is already signed or printed. Now these changes may not be visible to our eyes, but forensic tools can catch them very easily. So in those cases, mainly two tools are used. The first is VSC, that is the video spectral comparator. Now this device uses infrared and ultraviolet light to examine documents in different lighting and conditions. And what it does? It can reveal hidden writings, and also it can show the differences in ink shades. And also it helps us catch erasers, added text, or replaced sections. For example, if someone tries to change the date on a contract using a different pen, even if it looks the same in normal light, the VSC can spot the difference. That is how important the VSC is in question document analysis. Now another amazing tool is the electrostatic detection apparatus or ESDA. Now imagine you are writing on a notepad. Even if you remove the top page or tear it out, some pressure marks remain on the below page, right? That's exactly what ESDA picks up. It applies an electrostatic charge to the document and makes these hidden impressions or indentations visible, like a secret layer of writing left behind. Now this tool can be super helpful when someone writes something and then he removes it or tries to hide previous writings by using blank correction paper. So these tools are like the forensic version of an X-ray, revealing what the naked eye cannot see. So let's move on to the third type, that is handwriting and signature examination. And let me tell you, this is the most common type of analysis done in the forensic labs. And I'm sure you have noticed that we all have our own way of writing, like the way we form the letters, the angle of our writing, the spacing between letters. All of these are unique to us. Think of it like the fingerprint of handwriting. Now, forensic document examiners study these individual characteristics very closely. They look at how each letter is shaped, the slant or tilt of the writing, the spacing between letters and words, pressure on the pen, connecting strokes, and even the rhythm. This is especially important for signatures because signatures are used to verify identity in documents like checks, agreements, or wills. So even if someone tries to forge a signature, even by tracing it, it usually lacks the natural flow. That's something trained eyes can usually catch. So let me give you a small task to do to make this video more interesting. So try to copy a handwriting of your friend and try to do it exactly the friend writes. You will notice even if you try hard, you'll try to copy it, you will fail to do it exactly the same way your friend writes. So that's how the handwriting works. Next, let's talk about the tools used in this examination, that is handwriting and signature examination. First is transparent overlays. Now these help compare the question and known samples by placing them exactly on top of each other for alignment. Next are magnifying glasses. Now these are the basic things as you have seen in forensic movies or series, especially in CID series. Now these are generally used to zoom in on small details like the stroke endings, hesitation marks, or line quality. And lastly, digital comparison tools. It is the most advanced type to examine handwriting and signature. Now, these digital comparison tools can highlight even the smallest differences between two signatures or handwriting samples using computer software. So we have finished the first part of the video. Now let's move on to the second part of the video, that is document age estimation. So let me ask you, what is document age estimation? So in simple words, it is a forensic method of finding out how old a document is, or more specifically, when the ink was written or when the paper is used. Just think, someone shows a contract that claims to be from 2010, but with proper analysis, experts find out that the ink or the paper is from 2022, that is 2 or 3 years back. That's a clear sign of fraud or forgery. So this technique is used to check whether the date mentioned in a document is true or not. Why is this method so important? Now this method can reveal different frauds and crimes. So first point is fraud detection. So this examination can help detect fraud. It helps catch fake or backdated documents like fake receipts, agreements, or tampered legal records. The next is will and property disputes. In many cases, people try to create a will after someone's death but claims it was written earlier. Age estimation helps prove whether this was actually created before or after that critical event. Then lastly, it is mainly used in criminal investigations like forgery cases, check frauds, anonymous letters, fake ID documents. So the process of document age estimation can be done in two ways. First is the ink aging, then is the paper aging. Ink aging generally involves studying the chemical degradation or solvent evaporation of ink over the time. And similarly in paper aging, it relies on observing the physical and chemical changes in paper, such as yellowing, brittleness, or fiber breakdown. And I will give you a detailed explanation for the both. Now let's get into the first technique used to estimate the age of ink. It is something called volatile solvent evaporation. It may sound complex, but don't worry, it's actually quite logical. You see, most inks contain volatile solvents like alcohol or glycol, which are chemicals that slowly evaporate over the time once the ink is written on the paper. So here's the idea. When the ink is freshly written, a lot of solvent is still present on the paper. But after a few weeks or months or even years, most of the solvent evaporates into the air. So what we need to do is that we just need to measure how much solvent is left in the ink so that we can estimate how old it is. And to do this, we usually use scientific methods like TLC or gas chromatography. These techniques help separate the ink's component and check the remaining solvent level. Okay, let me give you an example. Let's say someone says a note was written last year. but the ink still shows a high amount of solvent. And what it means? It means that it was probably written more recently. This kind of test helps tell the difference between the fresh ink and the old ink, often within a range of weeks or months. Then the second technique used to estimate the age of ink is the oxidation or degradation analysis. Now this one is all about chemistry. Over time, the ink on a document reacts with air, especially the oxygen. This natural process is called oxidation and it causes the ink to go through chemical changes. And now here's the interesting part. Even if the ink still looks fine to our eyes, its chemical structures start to break down with age. Now the forensic experts use special machines like Raman spectroscopy and FTIR, that is basically the Fourier transform infrared spectroscopy, to detect these small tiny changes. So based on the level of oxidation, they can estimate whether the ink is still fresh or much older. And then the third technique is dye ratio changes. Now this is just another clever method as the other two. So most inks are not made from just one dye, basically one color. And here's the thing, not all dyes degrade at the same speed or at the same time. With time, some dyes fade faster than others. Now experts use a technique called HPLC to measure how much of each dye is still present in the ink. For example, in an ink, there are two dyes present, and I will name them dye A and dye B. So if dye A fades quickly, but dye B remains longer, and we notice that dye is almost gone, it means that the ink is quite old. This method is especially helpful for complex inks used in high quality paints or official documents. Okay, now that we have covered how ink is aged, let's look at the other half, that is the paper age estimation. Yes, even paper ages. And it shows certain signs, both physical and chemical, which experts can study to determine how old the document might be. Now let's break it down into three parts. First, there are techniques to determine the physical factors, then the chemical factors, and then the dating techniques. So firstly, let's talk about physical indicators. Now over the time, paper naturally goes through visible changes. Two common signs are yellowing and brittleness. Now this yellowing is caused by oxidation when the paper reacts with air, and similarly brittleness is caused as the fibers inside the paper starts breaking down. So if a document looks too clean or fresh but claims to be 20 years old, that's a big clue that something is wrong. And the second are the chemical indicators. So many of you have heard of this fact that paper is made mostly from cellulose and lignin, and both of these break down slowly as the paper gets older. So cellulose degradation weakens the structure of the paper and it becomes fragile and easy to tear. And similarly, lignin oxidation causes discoloration, that typically yellow or brown shade in old books or documents. That's because of lignin oxidation. So these chemical changes help scientists, that is a forensic scientist, understand if the paper is truly as old as it claims to be. Then the third is dating techniques. Now these involved high-tech parts, mainly the UV and IR lights. So UV and IR lights analysis is used to study hidden features. And for hidden features, I mean ink penetration or chemical damage that are not visible under normal light. And for really old documents like historical manuscripts, experts use radiocarbon dating, which gives a very accurate age range based on the decay of carbon atoms in the paper. Now, as amazing the document age estimation sounds, it is important to understand that science also has some limitations. Not everything is so accurate as it seems to be. So let's quickly go over to the main challenges forensic experts face when estimating the age of paper or ink. The first and very most common one is the environmental factors like light and humidity. So light, heat and humidity This can seriously affect how ink and paper age. Too much sunlight or moisture can speed up the aging process unnaturally. So a document might look older because it was stored in a bad condition, even if it's not that old. Then a second type is ink type variations. Not all inks are made the same. Some are water-based, some are oil-based, and some contain rare dyes or colors. And because of this, different ink ages at different speeds, which makes it difficult to compare two samples unless they are the exact same type. And the third type of limitation is the tampering using solvents. Sometimes people trying to commit fraud will actually use chemicals to make the ink look older or even newer. For example, applying heat or alcohol to speed up ink evaporation and fake its age. Now this can mislead the analysis if not detected carefully. And the last type is incomplete databases. So forensic labs don't always have a record of every single type of ink or paper out there. So if a rare or unusual sample is used, it can be hard to match it with known data, and that can limit how confidently we can date the document. So let's end this video with a quick summary. So this field of forensic science, that is the questioned document analysis and age estimation, plays a very important role in solving real-life cases by helping experts identify forgeries, detect alterations, and even verify whether documents are genuine or fake. Whether it is a check, a will, or a property paper, or anonymous threats, documents often carry hidden clues. And with the help of handwriting and signature examination, ink and paper analysis, and document age estimation, which all we have understood in this video. So through all this, forensic experts can uncover the truth hidden behind the paper. And also we have learned that even the aging of ink and paper can reveal when a document was actually made and whether it matches the claimed timeline. But we must also remember that science is not perfect. Different factors like environmental conditions, differences in ink, and even tampering with chemicals can sometimes affect the result. So that's why forensic expert analysis, careful interpretation, and the use of reliable scientific techniques are very important to make sure that a conclusion is trustworthy and legally acceptable in the court. So next time when you hold an important document, remember there is a lot more behind that piece of paper that meets the eye. So thank you for watching this episode of Case 23, where we break down forensic in the simplest way possible. So don't forget to like, share and subscribe and comment below if you want us to cover real case based on document forensics. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning. Bye bye.